right, look forward to a good meeting. The thing I'm required to do is to read this letter, and it's to honorable members of City Council in accordance with the Virginia Beach City Code, Section 2-21, and by the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Virginia Beach, I hereby call for a special formal session of the Virginia Beach City Council. Tuesday, May 9th, 2017, 6 p.m., City Council Chamber, 2401 Courthouse Drive. The purpose of the special formal session is for the City Council to consider and take action. Reference, number one, a public hearing on proposed issuance of $77 million in stormwater bonds. Moss Abbott proposal. Number two, the fiscal year 2017-2018 resource management plan. A, reconcile proposal. B, council members Moss and Abbott proposal. Three, a resolution to direct the city attorney to draft ordinances removing light rail taxes deferred May 2nd, 2017. And four, a resolution to affirmatively state the intent of the city council to redirect taxes raised for light rail and related multimodal projects to other city priorities. This call for a special formal session revises my letter of March 27th, 2017, signed Will Sessoms. Next, if everyone would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. You have the roll call.
Yes, Your Honor. All members.
I also, council has asked that I read this at every meeting. I want to remind everyone that City Council speaker policy that allows certain representatives of groups to speak for 10 minutes applies only to planning items and items where a public hearing is required by state law. As to all other items on the agenda, each speaker, whether speaking individually or on behalf of the group, will have 3 minutes to speak. That being said, let's go to work. We will first start with the public hearing on the stormwater utility bond issue of $77 million.
Ivan Tramp, the first speaker. Yvonne Cord, second. Ivan, I-V-A-N, Ivan Tramp.
We welcome you tonight.
Thank you. First off, I want to ask everybody in the room if they know where they stand on a flood map. Do any of you know? Two? Do any of you know where to go if there was a flood? What roads are safe? But okay. Some people here do, but most don't. My name is Ivan Trent. I have an undergraduate degree in political science. I'm getting my master's degree focusing on urban resiliency, social capital, and social networking. One of the things that I basically want to say is that the issue that I see is that we're not focusing on infrastructure that can handle the floods that we currently have. Rather, I see that you all are planning on ad hoc. As a problem occurs, you go and you deal with it. But that's not resiliency. Resiliency is preparedness, absorption of a hazard, and recovery. And so that means that you all should focus on building storm drains that are slow to dissipate but have a high capacity, living coastline, okay, as well as basically having barrier islands and basically teaching individuals and communities and groups on where they stand in a flood map, where they can go if there's a flood, as well as what they can do to mitigate problems such as planting trees if they are able to, and basically coming together to see other resources that are available. I don't see any of that coming from the city of Virginia Beach, where people's taxpayer dollars are being used in order to try to alleviate this, but rather you're building a concrete jungle similar to Norfolk, who, might add, has like 80% of their infrastructure that could be flooded by any storm, and you all don't want that. You all don't want to bring businesses that say, I can't open here because my business is flooded. So rather than building hotels, rather than building on these things, I suggest that basically you look at trying to invest in infrastructure. It is smart. You don't necessarily have to raise taxes. You just reallocate the funding that is already there. And I'm sure everyone in this room agrees. And that's what I would do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Yvonne Cord.
Come forward.
Kenneth Ford, Jr.
We welcome you tonight.
Thank you for listening to me. My name is Yvonne Cord, and first of all, it amazes me that we have to be here having these discussions when it's obvious that this situation is a no-brainer. But let me ask you all a question. What happens when we don't take care of our pets properly, or parents don't meet the basic needs of their children? The pets or children are taken away, it's labeled neglect, and fines or prison or both are imposed on the perpetrators. And yet this is how we are being treated when our most basic needs as citizens are not being met, causing us to lose our homes, file for bankruptcy for some, and others dealing with medical or mental issues. You pretend there isn't a problem and put out to the press that our city is so wonderful and beautiful when it clearly is not. The flooding is not going away, and every year it gets worse. We are at a point that you have painted us and yourselves into a corner that you can't get out of. It's time to take this problem seriously and make the mature decision to take care of the problem once and for all, and not throw a smidgen of money at it with a lick and a promise and think that it will make it all better. It's time to roll up your sleeves and make some serious commitments to the citizens that are the very reason you have money in your coffers. What has already been paid and use what has already been paid in to remedy a sizable portion of the repairs without making us shoulder even more of the burden of your mismanagement. I don't know about you, but I was taught homework before play, work before pleasure, and paying bills before spending on shiny new things. And if our infrastructure needs were being met, the citizens would be much more agreeable to getting the pleasurable things that you envision for our city. Then we could all be on the same page in promoting our city instead of setting straight the lies and hype of slick advertising. It is only fair that we should feel safe and comfortable in our own homes, as I'm sure all of you do. That's not too much to ask.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Kenneth Cord Jr. and Kenneth Cord III.
We welcome you, sir.
My name is Ken Cord Jr., and I'm a member of Princess Anne Civic League. Let me start by urging a no vote tonight. Mr. Moss and Miss Abbott have a good plan, but a lot of the reasons your proposals that you don't like are because it threatens part of the city's credit rating. Yet, when the concern was for when the light rail was on the table, there didn't seem to be any anything for the credit rating. No concern there. Another reason for the proposal doesn't seem to curry favor with many of you is because it takes money off the other projects. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Did you notice that every one of the proposals by the city manager to pay for the neglected drainage involved raising the cost of stormwater fee over $9 a month, with an increase almost $10 every year for the next 5 years? The cost is even more in the 10-year plan that he had. What are people living on a fixed income supposed to do when the bill goes up to almost $200 a month? Or do you even care? It seems you have no problem letting the residents of Virginia Beach bear the cost of fixing a storm drainage system that you have neglected for the past 50 or 60 years while you keep your capital projects going. Families need to make sacrifices. It's time for City Council to make some sacrifices too. The question is, what are you willing to sacrifice? I understand not everything is deliverable in the Moss Abbott budget, but it certainly looks like if you try to work out of the box, the money can be found without breaking the wallets of the citizens. If you seriously don't start fixing the drainage problems, there could be a class action suit coming your way. We can't take it any longer. Many of us are still recovering from Matthew. We can't take another flood, either financially or emotionally. It's time to pay the piper. So far, you've thrown money at developers who, for whatever reason, couldn't get money from the banks, so you found $3.6 million to fund the light rail before the citizens said no. You threw $4 million at all-day kindergarten on top of what was already asked. All this money is going every which way except where it's so desperately needed. Mr. Jones, is it more than a mere coincidence that 0.2% tax increase or $1 million in next year's budget is going to the Lake Chubb Bradford Lake? How did that happen? I'm afraid to even guess. Not long back, there was a statement by a member of City Council that spending money to fix the drainage in Windsor Woods, Princess Anne Plaza, and the lakes was too expensive because the city wouldn't get their return on their investment. It seems to me that all of you in the last re-elected cycle, the residents of Virginia Beach, have not gotten their return on their investment either. You work for us, not the other way around. This concept seems to have gotten lost on too many of you. If you can't find the money to get on these projects done in 10 years, which is still too long, Maybe it's time to start electing people that will work for the residents and not the developers.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Kenneth Jarvis III, and Frank Pipkin.
We welcome you tonight, sir.
Here to have fun. On May 2nd, you all held an informal meeting and some interesting comments were made. Shannon, you said you were in the trenches and saw what your constituents had to go through. That isn't the same as living with the destruction. I thought it was disgusting how you gave shout-outs to the neighborhoods that you work for in a manner that, and tone that says, don't worry, I got your back. But yet your voting record says otherwise. Let's not forget the Army Corps engineer you got to look at the city's draining plan, who also is a personal friend. I can care less if his assessment is 100% accurate. Have you learned nothing from Bob McDonald, Anthony Burfoot, and Mayor Sessoms? Barbara, you made a comment to which you said that y'all can't tax people and raise money that you can't even spend yet. Seriously? Then how is it that the people are still raising money for light rail? Because I just got my property tax and I'll be paying it in June. That is what you guys do. Meanwhile, y'all let critical infrastructure go without any sort of maintenance. Benjamin, you told John how much you respect and how bright he is. Then you turn right around in the very next breath and tell him how wrong his assessment is. Huh? What? You even insult your boss, Miss Wasserberg. You refer to her information which she got from you guys and her own research as misgivings. Have the huevos and just say her stupidity. Dave, your attitude pouring all this money into fixing drains when it's not going to flood again, or when it's going to flood again, is fair to say. After all, we are resting on bedrock. However, pouring only $2 million into fixing the drains, that's initial, and then everything else is, well, if it goes into the budget. And 15 years later is sick. The least you can do, and the rest of City Council, is to mitigate the majority of the problem. In addition to mitigation, let's talk about gravity in soft spots. Gravitational forces pull everything down. The more weight in a particular spot endures, the faster the spot will sink. Here's a Captain Obvious question. Why is the city adding an arena, a Ferris wheel at the oceanfront, and lots of high-density projects when you all admit Virginia Beach is sitting on an aquifer? I'll close with this. I read the article that Debbie Howard, Ms. Howard had thrown out the last one, and guess what? They want to bring in more affluent people and influential people. In other words, rich people forget everybody else.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Frank Pipkin and Reed Grenham.
We welcome you, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a pleasure to be here. And why am I opening up my big mouth again? Because I'd like to.
We
I
enjoy
notice
hearing
here
from you.
that we have an increase in taxes of $1. That's number two. And then I also see that we're keeping the light rail money and we're going to allocate that in different places, but you're keeping that too. So in other words, you're going to raise taxes and keep the taxes that should have never been put out in the first place. I've been a resident of Virginia Beach for over 35 years. In all this time, I've seen floods come and go. I've seen people lose their homes. I see floodings that's cost millions of dollars each and every time that it's done. And I watched this common council kick the problem down the road, saying, well, we just don't have the money to do it. And for years and years and years, you've been doing the same thing. Yet you always seem to have money to build a parking garage for hotels at Town Center, 5 to be exact, that will revert back to the hotels after a certain period of time of free parking, and then you'll be charging just to park there. You always have money for that. You always seem to have money for tips. You always have money for different projects that you people want to do, but you never seem to have enough money to take care of the problems facing the people in this room, in this city. They get flooded out. They don't need to hear more lip service from you people. They need to see some action. But instead of getting action, we're getting excuses. We're getting higher taxes. And these higher taxes, they're not even going to the problems that we have. You're going to spend $76 million, supposedly from a tip, to do infrastructure repair work needed to put the arena in. Well, gee, you know what? There are people that lost their homes wishing that $76 million went to them. We got people living near town center who got flooded out. And supposedly, oh, don't worry about the water from town center. We have a little pond that retains all that water. But living in the neighborhood, I watched that water running down Independence Boulevard, and I watched it running down in Independence and in Virginia Beach Boulevard, and they were not going into any ponds. You people need to start to do something, and I can't imagine why most of you people got reelected, because you don't do your job.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Pete Brenham and Mary Lovett.
No, Mary.
Yes,
Okay, who's speaking first, please?
Reed Brenham.
Reed. We welcome you today, sir.
Good evening, members of City Council. Mayor, it's good to see you again. You missed the last couple of meetings. Too bad. I hope you got a chance to watch them online.
I am up to date, sir.
Yeah, okay, because it was interesting. At the last budget hearing, we had many, many people come up and talk about how much they're suffering from the flooding. You've got a proposal and an opportunity here, all of you tonight, to really do the right thing. And the right thing is to actually change your course of direction in the way you've been going and support the Moss-Abbott proposal. That's a reasonable plan. Waiting 15 years to deal with this problem is really not dealing with the problem. People really can't have that happen to them. I feel for these people who've just barely got their houses back in order. If we wait that long, it's not if it's going to happen, it's when their homes will be flooded again. That's right. And we're going to put them through that again. As many people told you, our job up here really is, or your job, to take care of the infrastructure. You know, I understand economic development and all the things we want to do to make our city great. But we've got to get our priorities in order. And our priorities right now are dealing with this flooding. This proposal by Jessica Abbott and John Moss, that's a great opportunity. It really is. 6 years instead of 15, refocusing the money. And while I don't think you should have raised taxes for light rail before we even had a vote on light rail in the first place, but you did it, okay? Now that you have that revenue, you're already collecting that revenue, put it into this problem. But Mr. Hanson, don't drag this out so long. People cannot wait. We can forego some of the nice to have things that we've been talking about. It is ridiculous that there's only 3 minutes to come up here and try to communicate with all of you on matters this complex. It just doesn't allow for that real dialogue to happen. The young man that spoke about all the complexities in dealing with flooding, it's a system. It's a big deal. As Mr. Moss has been telling you, before you vote to spend money on some package of plans, you don't even know how much water it's going to get rid of or what it's going to do because you haven't done preliminary engineering. The right way to do that is to put the list together that Mr. Hanson said, go ahead and do that preliminary engineering and determine what am I going to get for my money? What's the order of the priority, and systemically what things will control the flooding? This is just basic common sense in engineering. But like light rail, you're going to go ahead tonight, I'm pretty sure, and approve a budget that's going to put a bunch of money in a laundry list of projects that you don't even know if they're going to work or not, and drag it out over 15 years. I recommend you vote yes, change your direction. I will say this, if you don't change your direction, you leave us with no choice but to change our city council. That's right. So thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mary Lovett.
We welcome you tonight, ma'am.
My name is Mary Lovett. First time I have ever come before you all. Time is running out for me. You spend 15 years to do this and do that. I'll be 92 years old. I won't be around, I don't know. But I want to enjoy my home. been there since 1968. I have seen flooding, but this is the worst. It's taken a toll on me. And I just want you to know that we need help now, not 15 years from now. The rain last week, Friday, flooding, toilet backed up. I could be very vivid. So they're saying, oh, your pipes are too small. Please, we need help. We're desperate. Time is running out for you all too. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please.
Diane Howard, Susan Heskett.
Diane, we welcome you.
Good evening, everybody. No, I was struck. I recently had the opportunity to speak to Ms. Kane and Mr. Wood at a stop by and chat, and we were talking about the budget. We also had a couple of city representatives, Mr. David Bradley and Phil Davenport from Public Works. And I asked Ms. Kane, what would you have all done if we voted for light rail? And she goes, we would have raised taxes. I'm like, but we are raising taxes. So it's like, you know, damned if you do, damned if you don't. So it's like there's never, ever, I can't even remember, when was the last time we didn't raise a tax or a fee? I mean, it's ridiculous. Every year, another tax or a fee. I'm really tired of hearing tourism keeps our taxes low. How is that possible when you keep raising our taxes every year because you want to spend more and more on cities, these tourism things? We added a laundry list of stuff to this budget just to keep on to that money. Field house, since when? Ms. Kane said at the informal hearing, when did we vote on a field house? I didn't see anything about a field house. And Mr. Ernst said, oh, well, when we talked to the tourism people and everything, we promised them when we raised the dollar on the hotels and everything that it was going to go to a field house. I could have sworn that was for an arena. Is there another dollar we're not hearing about here? Is there another? Because I thought that's what the arena people wanted, was that dollar. So now we're going to do a field house, and then we're going to do a parking garage, and then there's a beach maintenance facility. Meanwhile, all of these people here want their neighborhoods taken care of. We need to drain the beach. We need our drains drained. We need our infrastructure taken care of. So I urge you all to vote for John Moss and Jessica Abbott's budget, because it prioritizes the neighborhoods that need the money the most, puts those projects first, and does it within 3 to 6 years. Now, I know it's using up a lot of debt, and you won't be able to use it for your little pet projects, but we come first. And that's what we need to do, because 15 years is a long time to live in fear of the rain.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Thank you for your comments.
Susan Haskett and William Jennings. Susan Haskett, William Jennings. Susan Haskett.
She's coming. We welcome you tonight, ma'am.
I'm Susan Haskett. Some of y'all have probably gotten an email or two from me before. I live in Cape Story by the sea. I live on Sandalwood, and I'm here on behalf of my neighborhood again, because we flood just like Windsor Woods, and I don't want to flood again. We need drainage. We need proper drains. I have 4 French drains, and they're not doing the job. So I'm here. I feel like we need to come up with other solutions. We need to put the funding for new solutions, and I'm phase 3 of a project that y'all have, Eastern Shore Drive drainage, and I'm not sure where we are in those phases, but I do feel like we need to fund the drains and get our stormwater under control so we don't flood again.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please.
William Jennings.
We welcome you today, sir.
Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council members, and City Manager, my name is William Jennings. I'm a resident of the City of Virginia Beach and chairperson of the Flood Committee of the Princess Anne Plaza Civic League. The league, Civic League took a vote on the various stormwater CIP budget proposals, and Bob Elms, Vice President of the Civic League, expressed the results of the league's vote to the City Council on the April 27th public hearing at Bayside High School. The majority vote for the Civic League was to fully fund all CIP projects, stormwater projects throughout the city, leaving no neighborhood behind. The vote was for what was called option number 2 and what has been called the nickel a day per household 10-year program. That encompassed all neighborhoods. The city's real estate values and stability depend upon upgrading and replacing of stormwater and other infrastructure, some of which is now more than 5 decades old. The work on flooding, sea level rise, subsidence, storm surge, identifying areas that must be retreated from, and other resilience problems by the federal, state, city, military, and communities has just begun. Flooding of all kinds is a threat to everyone, and we must all work together to plan for the future of our people, our city, and our nation. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Next speaker, please.
That's all the speakers on this subject.
Okay, next, go to the next one, please.
Next subject?
Yep, the budget.
Robert Fitzgerald, and the next speaker would be Becky Bump. Robert Fitzgerald's first.
We welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Vice Mayor, council members. My name is Bob Fitzgerald, Robert Fitzgerald. I am a member of the community, Bayville Creek, and was managing member of our Dredge SSD. And I had sent a letter, late in getting it out. I was waiting for some information from Freedom of Information Department. I did receive that CD yesterday and was able to review it. I was disappointed in the amount of the communication. It wasn't about 12 pages, and several of them weren't dealing with ours. So I asked for 2 years, going back from April 2016 and going back to April 2014. So I did receive some, and I'd be glad to share that with you as well. I don't know if you all have privy to that, or you do. Good, okay. Then let me go directly to the letter that I wrote on Saturday morning. I hope you had time to read it, all members. May 6th, it was addressed to you, Mary, and the council members. I am writing, actually wrote this to you, requesting that you postpone or defer the vote on the increased tax to 56 cents up from 36 cents per hundred. The reason I'm requesting that is outlined in the letter. First of all, the cost of the dredge was about 2.4 times over what was estimated. The 294,000 came in at 705,800. A number, by the way, that was never communicated to us until after the dredge had taken place. So as you can imagine, it came as quite a shock last May when we met for that disclosure. Secondly, only a portion of that escalated cost was due to the increased depth. That was about $103,450. We increased the depth because we realized that could be done after Old Donation was able to go from 4 to 5 feet. So we did that. But that still left a deficit spread of about $308,000. $203,000 came from a transfer pier that was established in the neighborhood temporarily, and another $101,000 came from a tripling of the design cost. So my concern is, and getting down to the fourth issue, I'm going to have to skip through this because I know we're running out of time quickly. But the fourth issue was that there was a lease expenditure of $59,000 that I found out about 2 weeks ago today. And this expenditure was a result of evidently a private agreement, I was told by a city official, whereby the individual who had the transfer pier on his property would not allow.
Thank you very much, sir. I've got to be fair to everyone on the time, so I thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Becky Bump and John Densmore.
We welcome you tonight. Take your time. Hello.
I wish I could say this was a stormwater issue, my leg, but it's not. So anyway, my name is Becky Bump, and I live on Chubb Lake in Chesapeake Beach. Our house was flooded entirely by Hurricane Matthews, and 6 months later, we are still out of our home. Ours is an historic log cabin built in 1937, and the cost to raise it is prohibitive because of the log cabin construction. Since it's pre-firm or built before the floodplain elevations were established, we are able to put our house back together exactly as it is. However, without the ability to raise it and with the current stormwater situation in Virginia Beach, why would we? It really isn't a matter of if the house will flood again, but when, and I can assure you we can't go through this again. But my remarks tonight are not about our house. That's a very unfortunate side effect of a much bigger issue. It's stormwater in Virginia Beach, and I'm here on behalf of my neighborhood, Chesapeake Beach, and the 9 other neighborhoods identified with serious flooding issues due to stormwater. There was an article in the paper today about the stormwater in our neighborhood that elicited several negative comments about people who live on or near the water. Well, the folks in Windsor Woods and Princess Anne Plaza don't live on the water, and they had severe flooding too. Matthew unleashed a torrent of unmanaged stormwater in much of Virginia Beach. And while I understand there may be some perception issues since Chubb Lake was listed as an emerging concern in the budget, the issues in our neighborhood date back to the 1990s, and Councilman Jones is aware of them. The outfall for the lakes that manage our stormwater in the northwest corner of the beach are on the property of the federal government at Little Creek. They're not on city property. We have a very unusual situation. The reason we weren't heard from recently as much in the past is that we've chosen to deal with the base in an effort to keep the weir cleaned and the ditches drained. Not a good idea. Anyway, in March, Delegate Stolley facilitated a community conversation that included the Navy Public Works Department, Bayside Area City Councils, and getting in the same room was a big help. The largest percentage of the city budget comes from real estate taxes. In these neighborhoods that continue to flood, the home values will decline, resulting in lower taxes. Add to that the reputation of a city where many neighborhoods are at risk for flooding due to unmanaged stormwater, and we'll see how long people will want to live here or move here. The media stories are already out there and available on every computer and laptop. This will trickle down and affect all of us, and it's foolish to think otherwise. City infrastructure projects have been on hold and the focus of spending on other things. But the backbone of the city is its citizens. The greatest city in the world cannot be reduced to an 8-mile by 1-mile strip of land at the ocean front. That's right.
Thank you very much for your comments. I appreciate it. I've got to be fair to everyone, and your 3 minutes is up. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
John Densmore. John Densmore and Abby Causey.
Repeat it one more time, please.
John Densmore.
We welcome you, sir.
I appreciate you giving me this opportunity.
We're happy to do it, sir.
I'm 80 years old, my wife's 80. We were tax exempt on our real estate for several years. Then last year, of course, you hit me with a $511 tax bill for December. Then the next June, you hit me for $811. Now you're talking about increasing the tax again so a kindergarten kid can go to school all day. Now, when you're 80 years old on fixed income and handicap retirement, you don't have excess funds to donate to every little project that people want to throw out at us. That's all I've got to say. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir, for coming down. We appreciate your comments.
Sorry for stealing their time.
Thank you.
Causey and Virginia Wassenberg.
We welcome you tonight, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor Sessom, City Council members. My name is Abby Causey, and I am a lifelong resident of Virginia Beach. I actually grew up in Windsor Oaks West. This evening, though, I'm here to speak in support of all-day kindergarten for our schools. So is it time to run now? Okay. So there's a Haitian proverb, God gives, but he doesn't share. And the meaning of that means it's up to us to share. And I think right now, everyone here believes that if we're going to be taxed on something, then it needs to benefit the people who need it the most. So I'm speaking on all-day kindergarten, and I just ask you to listen. I'm a religious education director for 200 public school students in grades 1 through 5 for a Catholic parish in Virginia Beach, and some of my parishioners are here today for the Windsor Woods issue. My students pull from 16 different Virginia Beach elementary schools and comprise of a wide range of ethnicities and income levels. And on a personal note, I am the parent of 3 children, a senior at Princess Anne High, a special needs 4th grader at Kingston, and a rising kindergartner at Malibu. But I'm not here out of my own self-interest. I am here for the voices of other parents of rising kindergartners and preschool parents. And they are nurses, teachers, bus drivers, sheriffs, civil servants whose households require 2 incomes. One argument to keep half-day kindergarten is so the other half can be supplemented with parent involvement. This is not feasible for 2-income families who have to work 8-hour shifts and are not able to take the other half of the day off. It actually causes more stress for the families and possibly less involvement because they have to work more or extend their work days just to pay for childcare. The argument that the academic benefits of all-day kindergarten wane over time is only one isolated metric. All-day kindergarten will allow teachers to spend more time with their children to identify on how they learn and promote their development, not just academically, but socially and emotionally. But there is no official metric for the social and emotional benefits of kindergarten. And I realized this when my rising kindergartner's teacher was so impacted by her kindergarten teacher that she too became a kindergarten teacher and even invited her to her wedding years later. So there is no metric for that because how the positive impact on a child is immeasurable.
Bless you.
Lastly, the elephant in the room, a $14 million tax increase increase in taxes. And like I said, we're just looking so that when we are taxed, it benefits all. For me, it means that $75 a year or $625 a month, and that's less than what I would spend on a month for a combo meal at Chick-fil-A. And what would yours be? Well, my investment may very well be the paramedic or nurse who one day saves my life. And that's a financial risk I'm willing to take and why I'm here to support all-day kindergarten. 1,000 children in 53 schools for the cost of a combo meal. This past April, I attended
Thank you
kindergarten.
very much for your comments. I appreciate you coming down. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Virginia Wasserberg and Jesse Watt.
We welcome you tonight, ma'am.
Thank you. Lisa Grassi, and I am a Windsor Woods resident. I've lived in the city of Virginia Beach since 1982 and would like you guys to vote no for the capital budget and reevaluate everything. Go back to the drawing board. And I plead this, okay? I think things are a little bit upside down. And basically, my history is that, you know, like these other folks, I've spent thousands of dollars redoing my house, not in a flood zone. And I think that we went to sleep, okay? And we've been woken up. We're woken up out of our dream now. And, you know, we're not going to go back to sleep. We're going to keep on keeping on about this until something is done. And the problem is that, yes, you know, 10 years ago, I went into my neighborhood and there would be a torrential downpour and I'd have to park in another street and walk in, okay, because I couldn't drive in. And, you know, we should have known, okay, things are not being done right. Things are not being maintained like they should. You know, when I first moved into the neighborhood, town center wasn't there. Now we're getting all of that runoff. To the respect of these guys, you know, we have to make sustainable decisions. And unfortunately, putting a lot of concrete down and things like that are not sustainable. If we haven't learned from our sister city in Norfolk, you know, we haven't learned. Please do not accept this budget and go back to the drawing boards.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Virginia Wasserberg.
We welcome you tonight.
I just want to show you this. If you haven't seen it yet, it's from the Virginia Pilot editorial cartoon on Sunday. And I wanted to bring it up here because I really identify with that lady at that door. I feel like I've just screamed my head off when it comes to needing help. And I'm a little bit defeated in thinking that the whole city's not going to get the help they need when it comes to stormwater. At least they're not going to get it right now. Maybe they'll get it next year, maybe they'll get it the year after that, or 15 years from now. I don't know. But I'm not here just for my neighborhood tonight. I'm here for my city. And I had a really great conversation today with Mr. Tom Leahy, 45 minutes, in fact, or 43 minutes perhaps, about how if you guys voted on the capital budget, if you voted no tonight, and you went back to your workshops, and you worked on that budget to put more money in it, then you could fund all these projects in the city. You really could. And I really believe in all of you that you could do that. Ms. Kane, she came before you, she went before Mr. Hanson and asked him for that 10-year plan. And, you know, there's this, that, and the other thing about it in regards to advertisement, and Mr. Leahy let me know about that. So, you know, I just ask that you guys do that. I ask that you vote no on the capital budget tonight. Just tonight. And I know that there's more projects in that budget than just stormwater. But let's be honest, it's a very, very important subject to our city. And I know that Mr. Moss and Ms. Abbott, their proposal's not going to make it tonight. So I'm not going to stand here and beg for you to support their proposal, because I know that you're not going to support it. But I am going to stand here and beg for you to support Ms. Kane's proposal of 10 years. I'm going to ask you to vote no tonight and go back to your workshops and work hard for the citizens of Virginia Beach. Work real hard. And I know, I believe in Mr. Hanson. I really do. A lot of people are probably shaking their heads at me right now and saying, silly girl, she believes in the city manager, but I do. And I believe that he can come back and give you guys a good capital budget that will help not just Windsor Woods and Princess Anne Plaza and the lakes, but will help the entire city of Virginia Beach. You got to do what you got to do, but please prove me wrong that that's not you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Jesse Watson and Wallace Damon.
We welcome you, sir.
Thank you. It's nice to see you all again. I've heard a lot lately that Virginia Beach is a great city. And I've lived here since 1993, and until recently, I would have agreed. But now I have to ask you, by what measure is Virginia Beach a great city? When you have citizens who are afraid when it rains, when you have children telling stories about how their house flooded and how they had to evacuate, and how there's no plan to end that. There's no plan. 15 years is not a plan, especially when they're empty promises, because that number can change every year. That money is not appropriated. Funded is not appropriated. So that's an empty promise. It's an empty promise. You know, I can appreciate that you guys are telling us that, but it's not what you say, it's what you do. And right now, we haven't seen you guys do much since October 8th. We haven't heard from you other than 15 years. We haven't seen you guys come out. We haven't seen more storm trucks. We haven't seen anyone inspecting. We haven't seen modeling done. We haven't seen any of these things that's been talked about. 15 years is too long. And I would just ask you to just remember that your jobs are to represent the will of the people, not impose your will on us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Wallace Damon. Wallace Damon. William Jennings.
We got a gentleman coming down here. We welcome you, sir. Nice to see you this evening.
My name is Wallace Damon. I'm the current president of the Chesapeake Beach Civic League.
just to the west of Chesapeake Beach where we live. Our neighbors, the lakes, Lakes Chubb and Lake Bradford connect us at the hip to Little Creek Amphibious Base and their water issues when we have a storm. We are surrounded with water in Chesapeake Beach. Lake Joyce and Lake Pleasure House continue to overflow more and more each time it storms. And Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel brought a lot of concrete and asphalt to our Chesapeake Beach many years ago. That water that does not penetrate that roadway and all of our new homes and condos, trying to find a way to get into the ground. Bailey Pines sits right beside us on our east. During that storm last October, I actually saw fish swimming on Indian Hill Road, and I don't know when I'll ever see something like that again, but it was on the news and I saw it with my own eyes. We must have enough vision to get out in front of our stormwater issues. These stormwater issues of ours will never go away, and I'm certain, as well as I know you people, that you will do your very best to take care of these issues, and if there's anything I can ever do to help you, please let me know.
Thank you very much for your comment. Next
William
speaker, please.
Jennings. William Jennings.
William Jennings, I think I already spoke, but if you want me to speak again, I will.
No, that's, next speaker, please.
Scott Pressler.
Thank you.
Scott Pressler. Dallin Lord.
We got a speaker coming. We welcome you today.
Hi, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and all of my neighbors. Neighbors, if you do not want to wait 15 years for relief and you want it now, please stand up. My name is Scott Pressler, and I live at zip code 23464. I moved to Kempsville area of Virginia Beach in the summer of 2015. On July 31st, 2016, my vehicle, which was parked on the street beside my house, was flooded. We received so much water that I have pictures of our mailbox halfway submerged. I did have to replace my battery and have the entire interior cleaned. Fortunately, it was not totaled. On October 9th, however, when Hurricane Matthew came through Virginia Beach, that's a day that I will never forget, and neither will my neighbors. Having suffered the previous flooding, I moved my vehicle to the furthest point of our driveway, and water still reached its tires. Some of my neighbors who were on vacation, they came back to totaled vehicles. Now, whenever there is heavy rain, I feel an obligation, a moral obligation, to tell my community whenever there's heavy rain. I have to give them a warning that there will be flooding and that their vehicles are in danger whenever there is heavy rain. No, this was not just because of the hurricane. Virginia Beach has had flooding issues for years, and nothing is being done to protect our community. It is not about if another flooding will happen, it's about when that flooding will happen. As a millennial, why would I move to Virginia Beach if I knew my car would be flooded out? As a millennial, why would I move here to only constantly worry about my property every time we receive heavy rain? Why is Virginia Beach, with its high flood insurance premiums, making it harder, not easier, for families to move here? Our city council's negligence is disproportionately affecting the impoverished, our most vulnerable, and it's wrong. I'm asking you tonight to vote no to this budget.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Dallin Lord. Frank Pipkin next.
We welcome you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, honorable city council members, Virginia Beach, Virginia was created back in 1963 by the merger of Princess Anne County, where we are right now, just a few hundred feet that way. It was mostly due to the fact that they were worried of the encroachment of Norfolk annexing property. The people in Virginia Beach at the time were worried that they would end up paying their hard-earned tax dollars to economic revitalization projects, to downtown, ventures that they had no stake in. Right now, there are people around the city that have, I think 10 to 15 of them spoken already today. They're worried about flooding, issues that affect their lives. And meanwhile, we still talk about arenas, we talk about project going over budget with the Cavalier. We talk about all sorts of economic incentives at the beach. Virginia Beach pulls in about, I think, $1.4 billion in tourism, but 54 million of that goes to taxes that the city takes in, and a far greater percentage of our taxes come from our property values. Now, if our property isn't protected, then that's a big source of revenue. People are gonna start moving out. I've already considered it myself, but I figured I'd stay here over the next, I just bought a house, and I figured I'd stay here and try to come to more council meetings, get more involved, and perhaps change things for the better. So I'm just asking that you vote no on this budget, go take a look at it again and try to tune it out. Listen to Moss and Ms. Abbott, they've had some good ideas. And I respect that, and I think the people here would respect that too.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming down. Next speaker.
And Judy Wren. Next.
Welcome back.
Did you notice my shirt?
I got it. It's great.
Anyways, why am I here again? I enjoy this, that's why. I'm over here looking at capital improvements programs and obligation public improvement bonds, and then the utility system revenue bonds, stormwater. And I'm saying to myself, well, obligations public improvements, doesn't that include stormwater? Now, what brought to my mind, or what just keeps reminding me was a $6.5 million survey that you people paid for a survey about light rail. And one of the items inside of that light rail survey was the professor from ODU stating that water levels in this area changed 13 inches. 6 inches from water rising and 7 inches from the ground seceding, meaning sinking. I realize that the sanitation department is working on a plan to pump water back underground to hopefully to raise it back up again. And that's a great wild thing. That's nice. But that's not going to help. It's not going to help the people that are suffering today and tomorrow and next week and next year. And every time the rain turns around and hits this area, people's homes are going to be flooded. And 6 years down the road isn't going to help them this year. It won't help them next year. And it won't help them at all. And every time I turn around, I see here, a general obligation public improvement bonds for the amount of $69 million. Well, it seems to me, I remember that you're going to spend $76 million in capital improvements, infrastructure improvements for the arena alone. And I remember being up here one day saying, I know you people are going to put a parking garage. And lo and behold, you're talking about putting a parking garage, but you're saying it's for something else. But in fact, it's right across from the arena. And so that's something that's come to fruition. It's about time that the people in the city of Virginia Beach, who's been loyal to this city all these years, got something in return. And the budget that you're proposing, I suggest you vote no, because it's not right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see the next speaker, please.
Judy Wren, and Heidi Jeffries.
We welcome you, ma'am.
How's everybody tonight? Well, I asked you a question. I asked you to do something for me last time I was here. I asked you to go home and pray about it. Did anybody go home and pray about it?
Every night.
Nobody.
Every night.
I asked you to pray about it and do the right thing. And now you want to use the money for something else. And you say you still don't have the money for Windsor Woods. You need to stop talking about arenas and parking garages. I know you want the people here, but you know what? I might just start going on TV and talking about Virginia Beach, how lousy the city council is, and let them know, don't come to Virginia Beach. All y'all want to do is those people. You don't care nothing about us. You don't care. And I'm sick of it. I'm 80 years old. I love my house. I love Virginia Beach. But I don't love what y'all are doing to us. When that flood came, I was in the hospital with my son, which died right after the flood.
I'm sorry.
Didn't have nowhere to go. He wouldn't, if he'd have lived, he wouldn't have had a place to go. But yet, I moved this in Virginia Beach in 1961 at Princess Anne Plaza, my first house. My husband came home in the middle of the night, coming from work. He was in the Navy. Honey, I'm flooded out. Come help me. I got out of my bed and went, and we pushed the car up to my driveway because the water was so light in 61. And then we turned around and bought a house in Windsor Woods, which was stupid, wasn't it? That was real dumb. But we loved Virginia Beach and we wanted to be here. And now, even before all this, I still had water coming to my house, not actually in my house, my garage. Y'all can't begin to think about other things. You need to think about us. We pay our taxes. I paid personal property taxes this week. And now, what is real estate taxes coming up pretty soon? I'm gonna have to pay that. So y'all need to start thinking about the people and not what you want, but what we need.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Next speaker, please. We welcome you tonight, ma'am.
Thank you, welcome back.
Thank you.
I am really grateful that I live in a country where I can come and talk to you. And what I hope is that instead of hearing me tonight, you'll listen to me. 7 months ago, almost to the day, Hurricane Matthew swept through, and if somebody had told me that I would be addressing City Council in 7 months from October 7th, I would have said no way. But here I am. And today I'm here to urge you to vote no on the proposed budget and to consider better stormwater and flood projects and to consider doing them sooner rather than later, like tomorrow. Since I've been coming and talking, and by the way, I want to thank you for reading my emails, because I have gotten some responses which indicate to me that you are reading them, and so I don't feel like I need to repeat my story, and I thank you for doing that. I really do. But in talking with my friends and colleagues about this process that I've been going through, speaking at public hearings, et cetera, a lot of people have told me, you know, the City of Virginia Beach government is nothing but a good old boy system. You got no hope there. So I wanted to be sure that I had a correct understanding of that phrase, and I looked it up. And this is what I found. Pejoratively, the phrase can often suggest a man with an anti-intellectual bias or some other intolerant viewpoint. The phrase also can refer negatively to someone who engages in cronyism among men who have known each other for a long period of time. I'm here tonight to urge you to ask yourselves, is this a legacy you want to live with? Instead of engaging in cronyism among men who have known each other for a long period of time, imagine what it would be like to be forward-thinking. Think outside the box. Listen to your younger city council members and attract young people to live in Virginia Beach. Young people are the future of the city. Instead of the old way of doing things, the good old boy way of doing things, imagine what it would be like to actually provide ample public safety by maintaining our city's infrastructure. If our city's infrastructure does not improve now, not in 15 years, more and more people will simply not be able to afford to live here, and I submit will not want to live here. Think about it. If we can't attract young people to live here, the city's general fund will be non-existent and none of the CIPs will come to fruition, essential or not, public safety or not, sports arenas or not. I submit you are putting the cart before the horse. 50 years later, be the city council that makes a difference.
Thank you very much for your comments.
you.
Appreciate you coming down. Thank you. Next speaker, please. Next speaker.
Diana Howard,
and Teresa Longelli.
We welcome you back, young lady.
Hi, thanks again. I'd like you to vote no on this budget too. And I wanted to say something about full-day kindergarten. The schools only need $2 million next year to start expanding full-day kindergarten. You don't need $14 million until 5 years from now. If they can't find $2 million in their budget, then I guess it wasn't a priority to them. So you shouldn't be raising that. You also don't need to hire or create another 139 jobs, because you already have like 200 jobs that are not filled. So you could, if you have to hire 139 jobs, you don't have to fund them all year. That's something that Mr. Morse has proposed before, so that would be some money savings in there. You could decrease the reserve for contingencies, which you've increased by $6 million. It was like $4 million last year. It's almost $11 million this year, right? You have a helicopter that you want to buy in the budget, a $9 million helicopter. You want to put $4.5 million on it this budget, and then you're not putting any money for the next two, and then you put another $4.5 million. So you can like divide that $4.5 million by 3, save $3 million in the budget now, and just put $1.5 million for the next 3 years, and you can still get your helicopter, right? In the Economic Tourism Development CIP, you've got money that was transferred in there from the general fund. Now, I thought all that stuff was supposed to be serviced by the tip, so you can like take that money and put it in stormwater drains. You can take the $10 million out of the strategic growth area project, that's CIP. You can take the $1 million out of the transit corridor development, right? And you already got $4.6 million from FEMA, so that's extra money. And then there's this ordinance for the $8 million calling the Sandbridge tax increment financing a surplus. So it's a surplus. Where is that money going? I hope it's going to the Sandbridge Road, Miss Henley, or to other areas in our district there that were affected by flooding, and just not going to the arena or anything else in this budget. I hope that's where it's going. I don't know where it's going because it doesn't say. It just says that it's a surplus, right? So we have a choice. We have Mr. Morse and Abbott's budget, or we have the city manager's budget. I say no on the city manager's budget, yes on Morse and Abbott's budget. And if you don't do either of them, at least come together and do what's best for us. Do the right thing.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Teresa. And the next will be Ivan Trent.
We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you. I'd like to say history's being made. I ended up going to church in jeans on last Sunday in Stafford, Virginia, and here I am in jeans at City Council. That's rare. Everybody, it seems, wanted the light rail taxes to, one of the light rail taxes and fees implemented 2 years ago and voted down, but it was voted down by a majority of Virginia Beach residents. The school board wants to extend pre-K and fund full-day kindergarten, and even though they received an extra $24 million above what they received last year, they did not fund it in their budget, asking instead for a $14 million increase in funding when they only need $2 million for next year. That sounds like Common Core math to me. The residents who were flooded in Hurricane Matthew want to accelerate the stormwater CIP projects to prevent any future damage to your homes. And as you know, I am a flood victim of Hurricane Matthew. And also, I didn't mention this last time, but when they finally, after me hollering and screaming and everybody complained, they actually came out and dug up our pipe. And it's made out of some clay or something. And it was completely shattered. So in my simple-minded sort of way of understanding drainage, I kind of think maybe there's a real emergency here, that maybe there's a lot of other crumbled drains. And they don't work when they're crumbles. So even though the city has an increased revenue due to increased real estate assessments, additional money from the state and $4.6 million in reimbursement from FEMA for Hurricane Matthew expenditures, the city's insatiable desires for more revenue not only plans to keep the light rail taxes and fees, they also want to increase our taxes for education and storm fees for flooding. I am for not raising taxes at all, to work within our budget and fix our problems, something that maybe should have been done a long time ago, priorities, maintaining your home, maintaining the city, maintaining the state, maintaining the country, then all the extra little things. While citizens flooded public hearings on the budget asking the city to prioritize spending in order to address flooding issues sooner rather than later, it seemed like the request fell on deaf ears. In fact, the vice mayor only agreed to increase funding by 0.2 in order to add Lake Chubb as a new stormwater project to the CIP at the request of Delegate Chris Stoll. That 0.2 will go directly to funding that project. The city manager, in conjunction with some of our city council members, have added numerous projects to the list of wants. And I just want to say, I'm hearing about field houses and arenas and all that.
Thank you very much for your comments. We
Thank
appreciate you coming
Say
down.
no to the budget.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Ivan Trent.
Thank you very much.
We're
It's good
welcome
to
to
be
be
back
back.
here. Thank you, sir. I just wanted to basically ask you all, have you all thought about putting some resources in the budget to join the HR adaptation forums in Norfolk and, join other universities and state institutions, engineering firms to look at basically ways to allocate funding better to be a more resilient city?
We're here to listen, but we are doing that.
Okay, so could you explain to me in what ways that you all are doing that?
This is a public hearing. We're listening
Okay.
to you now.
Okay, well, well, it's funny because as I came up here earlier, when I asked everybody about the, where you all stand in a flooding situation, none of y'all said anything about your situation. And so basically what I would like to go and try to say is that we need to focus on trying to bring resiliency to Hampton Roads. And I say that as a priority. One thing that I would like to stress, and I didn't earlier, is that imagine the roads. Imagine if they're flooded. Imagine that very well, where, if you don't put your money into that. And then imagine basically there's a lot of problems, flooding, and that there's an emergency. How are you going to get to those people? How are you going to get, how are people going to move through commerce? How are people going to be able to literally just go about their day? This is a significant problem for all of Virginians, and it is also a burden for the city of Virginia Beach as well as all of Hampton Roads. And I think that if you do not allocate funding wisely, to me at least, the state will step in. And that's not something that you want. You don't want the Commonwealth to go and tell you exactly what to do with the money because they have that ability. We operate under the Dillon rule. It is very harmful. So I think that if you all are really serious about trying to make this community resilient, then you should look at all these people right here. They're your constituents. You all should vote on their wishes, be their delegate, be their voice. And if not, be prepared to actually tell them why you would prioritize putting hotels and buying helicopters and buying all these other toys rather than actually voicing the issues that they have. I guarantee you, if you do not listen to their concerns, there's a referendum once. It could happen again. Okay? Not only that, but you all could also be voted out. And that's not something that none of you want. You don't want to be known as the person that got voted out. You all want to build your political career. You all want to basically go and do stuff with your life. This is not the way to do it.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Marlene Castellucci.
Next speaker.
Marlene Castellucci.
We welcome you tonight.
Reed Granum is next.
Good evening. I'm Marlena Castelluzzo, Chair of Virginia Beach Taxpayer Alliance, and we want to address not just the abysmal record and lack of stewardship that this council displays, excluding you, Mr. Moss, Mrs. Abbott, and periodically Mr. Dyer, but council's total callous disregard for the most basic needs of citizens of this city, your employers' safety. Our members and board are not surprised that the mayor can turn a blind eye to citizens' needs. After all, he does have to pay back that $700,000 war chest to Bruce Thompson, Armada Hoffler, Gerald Tavares, Runnymede, Breeden, etc. with his votes, and of course, other members of council that he shares his war chest with, like Mrs. Wilson, Mrs. Kane, and others. But Vice Mayor, for you to hop on this wagon, why? It's outrageous that you actually call your budget proposal a conciliatory budget. You have a judicious proposal from council members Moss and Abbott, a budget that not only fulfills the flooding safety needs ahead of the city manager's boondoggle plan, but does not burden citizens of Virginia Beach with unfair increased taxes and fees. Mr. Jones, our membership clearly heard you state at Mr. Moss's reelection party that he was the smartest person on council and no one understands numbers the way he can. Then why are you turning your back on the proposal that a council member who's responsible to four-star admirals for billions upon billions of dollars for the U.S. Navy, and a councilwoman whose career is and has been dealing directly with flood insurance and the fiduciary responsibilities of those policies and companies, why turn your back on their expertise? To propose a new $50 million city hall, a $4 million to beautify private property on Lynn Haven Parkway, a $36 million parking garage, a field house, to name some of the fluff in the conciliatory budget is obscene. What's wrong with the field house at Princess Anne? Is it not close enough to do Bruce Thompson's hotels? We can understand Mr. Davenport's failure to comprehend the details and complexity of the Abbott-Moss budget. He was just figuring out how to put on long pants while Mr. Moss was dealing in billions of dollars of Navy budget necessities. And after all, Mr. Davenport relies on his family heritage and the mayor's war chest for his position. Shame on all the citizens in this room and others who lost their homes, possessions, and pets to flooding for thinking that our city has a moral and legal obligation to review detailed data and fiscally responsible plan. What are any of us thinking that we demand that flooding disasters take precedence over Bruce Thompson and other developers? No to the conciliatory budget, yes to the Moss-Abbott budget now. Drains, not trains, games, or developers'
Thank you very much.
costly
We appreciate your
aims.
comments. Thank you. Next speaker.
Reed Grenham and Hallie Martin.
We welcome you back and that nice young person with you.
Good evening, City Council. Mr. Hanson, I'd like you to take a good look at Violet, one of our newest members of the community. She'll be 17 years old by the time your flooding plan is complete. Wow. 17 years old. Do you think Violet can wait 17 years so that she can have some security from her house flooding? Probably not. Listen, I've been up here enough. You know my position on everything. I've explained it clearly. It's about priorities. That is your job, actually. I mean, you know, at the end of the day. But I do want to say something I haven't said. There is a difference between a budget and a spending plan. And people in this room, we have to live with a budget. We have a certain amount of income, and we spend it on our priorities. This isn't a budget, Mr. Hanson. It's a spending plan. It raises money, raises taxes, add fees, more debt, more debt. We have so much unmet obligated debt for our retirement services for our employees. We have time bombs of these things ticking, and you guys know this. You go over these numbers. You're well aware of the financial situation of our city. Person after person that came up here today and really explained something to you. If we don't deal with this flooding, and real estates represent 85% of the revenue that flows in from our local taxes, and the house values begin to decline and people won't move here because of the flooding, if we don't do that, we're on a downward spiral that you won't recover from. I mean, you know, this is a great city. My wife is a local, born here. My daughter is a local, lived here all her life back there, Marina. Violet's a local. Really think about what you're doing. A lot of people here have come up and asked you tonight to reconsider the path that you're on. You guys got a chance. Go back, look at this CIP, look at this budget again, and make it a greater priority to fix the flooding problem. You really can't wait that long. And I guess I'll close with this. When I went to Windsor Woods and met with some of the families and walked through the devastations in their houses, and I saw the work that they did to restore their homes, Can you imagine what it's going to be like the next time we have a storm here and those very same houses flood again after all they've been through? Have some compassion. Go back, do the budget over, do what the people have asked you, and don't stick Violet with something she's going to have to deal with in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Heidi Martin. Heidi. Heidi Martin.
Holly, say it again.
Heidi. Heidi.
Holly.
H-A-L-L-I.
Yeah,
Holly. And next will be Ramon Austin.
We welcome you tonight.
This is actually for the water bill. I am disgusted. I've been here so many times for you to lower it. It's only me and my house, and some reason it went up $30 for no apparent reason. During tax season, I'm not home much. Okay, you can imagine, I do taxes. I'm at work, I leave the house about 8 o'clock, don't get home till 9 o'clock. How in the world did my bill go up $30? I also made a payment. I sent my payment in. They had the nerve to turn my water off today and charge me extra, okay? This is despicable. I want this fixed. I want a credit on my bill because I don't have the money. I work very part-time right now since tax season's over. I really am not, I don't have a full-time job. I've been looking, I can't find anything here. So something needs to happen with this. I do not want to, there's no way I could pay it, okay? I paid what I could. They didn't even put the whole deposit in, okay? They would not put the whole deposit in. And now they have the nerve to charge me late fee, delinquent balance. No, I cannot afford this. This is ridiculous. So something needs to be done about the water bill. And I get basically charged the same fees as 6 people, and I'm only 1, okay? I've said this many times. You need to prorate the bill. This is disgusting. I mean, I've had it with this city. I really have. I'm just stuck here right now, okay? Because I'm going through a lot, and I'm just stuck here. Not going to go into my other situation, why, but, you know, and I'm disgusted. I can't afford this. Does anyone want to pay it for me? I mean, I don't have it. I mean, this is, enough is enough. And I've spoken to people, and they all agree with me. So I did make a payment. They still shut off my water, okay? I should not have to pay these fees. So something needs to be done about this. And also about, you know, how you bill people. You don't bill someone who has 6 people in the house the same as 1 person. Okay, something really needs to be done, and I'm just sick and tired and over it with this city. I'm dying to move out, just move in with a friend, so I won't have any more utility bills. But unfortunately, I can't do that. Okay, I'm stuck, I'm unemployed, I'm looking for a job. I can't get a job in the city. I have over 25 years accounting experience and can't get anything here. I worked on Wall Street in New York and can't get anything here.
Wow.
Okay, it's ridiculous. And I've had interviews, they don't know how to hire here either. The city is pathetic. And really, something really needs to be done. So I hope somebody after the meeting, you know, can help me with this and clear this out of the system so I do not have to pay this extra, because I did make a payment.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next
Ramon
speaker, please.
Austin.
We welcome you tonight, ma'am.
Hi. I wanted to just see if you could pass those around. My name's Dr. Ramon Austin. I've never been here before. I've never been to a city council meeting at all. I wasn't planning on speaking. I was talked into it, but I'm happy to be here because you all need to hear some of this. I live in Pungo. I don't live in Windsor Woods. I'm not having the same problems that they're having, but I'm still having water problems, and your helicopter that you're going to get actually might be a benefit to me. I have not been able to leave my property three different days in the past week. That's never happened, and I've been living out there for 34 years. We've had some flooding in the past. There, I think, was one time that I couldn't leave the property, but as I said, it's never been as common as it is now. I live a little ways past Blue Pete's restaurant. They flooded twice this past week, and I'm not sure that they're going to reopen. And that's a loss for the community because it's been there for a long time. My son used to manage it when Pat Ricks was the owner, and there's a lot of people in the community that will be sorry to see it go. My neighbors have told me that the culverts or the pipes under the roads out where we live are collapsed. That's part of the reason why the water doesn't recede. The wind is what creates our flooding. The wind has been there since before I was born. So the wind hadn't changed. Something else has to have changed for it to get worse. My husband had a stroke not too long ago, a very severe stroke, and he's still in the hospital. I could not go and see him 3 times this past week. And when I got there after the first 2 days that I missed that were in a row, he was having respiratory difficulty. How would you feel if the person that you love the most in this world was somewhere else, and because of the water, you couldn't get to them? I couldn't even wade to get to somebody that could take me because there's poisonous snakes out there. I know that's not your problem, but the flooding is, the roads are. Somebody mentioned earlier this evening that they've been turned down in the past because it doesn't give a return on your investment. Well, right now, I feel like you all are not giving us a return on our investment.
That's right. That's right.
And some of you all may be familiar with one of the items that I led the charge for in the recent election, and that was the Trump train. I built that train along with some helpers. And it's known nationally. We just had a big interview done by an international paper about the train. They came down here from Washington. We were instrumental on changing things in this country because our representatives didn't do what they should.
Thank you very much for your comments. I'm free right
Okay.
now, time. Appreciate you coming down. Next speaker, please.
Aaron Edlow.
Could you say it again, please?
Aaron Edlow.
Here she comes. We welcome you, ma'am.
My name's Erin Edlow. I live in the 84th House District. Shannon Kane is my council member. But I'm here to talk to you about the flooding, which a lot of people have been talking about today. I live in Green Run. The night that the storm hit, I had to stay at a friend's house because I couldn't drive home because the streets that I take to get home were too flooded for me to drive down. The next morning, fortunately, I was able to get a ride with my friend to the entrance of my neighborhood. But that was it because the water was so high that they couldn't actually take me to my house. I had to walk through waist-deep water to get back to my house. Now, my parents, they live in Windsor Woods. Every single room in their house flooded. Fortunately, they make enough money to where they were able to stay in an apartment while their house was being renovated before they were reimbursed by FEMA. But a lot of people can't do that. And they shouldn't have to.
Right.
We have this money to build this sports arena. But for a city that relies on tourism, flood mitigation should be a top priority. What happens when that arena floods the next time a storm hits?
Yep.
Who's going to be paying the bill for that? We taxpayers are. Flood mitigation has to be a top priority for a city that relies on tourism. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please.
Theodore Brill. Theodore Brill.
Next.
That's all the speakers.
Thank you, and thank you all very much for your comments. Council, we've heard the comments, and I would say to you that I have heard from Mr. Moss and Mrs. Abbott with the concurrence of the city attorney, and this is something we did years ago. They have requested that we vote on the operating budget separately from the CIP budget, which I have no problem doing since we have done that in the past, and it is the right thing I am required to do. That being the case, is there a motion, and then we can have discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to move for approval of the reconciled proposal, the fiscal year 2017, 2018 Resource Management Plan A, fiscal year 2017, 2018 operating budget, item I, appropriate $1,969,677
$969,000,000.
$1,969,677,901 for the operations of the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2017 and ending June 30th, 2018. 2, establish the tax levy of $1.25 per $100 assessed valuation on real estate for fiscal year 2018. 3, establish the tax levy on personal property, machinery, and tools for calendar year 2018. 5, declare $8 million as surplus within the Sandbridge Tax Increment Financing District, Ray Beach, and shoreline restoration and management at Sandbridge. 5, implement the 2018 employee and retiree health insurance plan. 6, authorize city manager to submit an annual funding plan to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. 7, amend section 32.5-2 of the city code, Ray equivalent residential unit fee. 8, amend sections 35.1-4 and 35.1-5 of the city code, Ray Sandbridge Special Service District. 9, amend sections 35-64 and 35-67 city code, Ray exemption or deferral of real estate taxes for the elderly or disabled. 10, amend revenue dedications for the agricultural reserve and open space programs and redirect revenue previously directed to the multimodal fund to the general fund in support of stormwater and general capital projects. And 11, provide additional local supplement to the Sheriff Ray Career Development Program. So moved.
I have a motion, I have a second.
Second.
And a second. Discussion, yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to make a substitute motion to defer this indefinitely until we can have further discussion and deliberations on it so the public has a better understanding of what we're doing.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
We'll vote on the substitute motion first. Is there discussion first? Yes, sir.
Yeah, if I could say, you know, I'm very proud to be on the city council and represent the people. And we have done some wonderful things in the past. I can tell you that stormwater is an intimate problem with me. I am the councilman that over Rosemont Forest, and a number of years ago I came back to this council after they flooded a number of times, and this council gave us a $6.5 million pump station. I'm sorry to say that during Matthew, it failed because there was nowhere for the water to go. This is an unfortunate situation. But the point is, I honestly believe that this council is moving forward in trying to address the problem. And I think, in all honesty, and believe me when I say that, you know, this is a tough one to really even talk about, because I think the magnitude of the storm really, you know, exposed, you know, some of our vulnerabilities that we didn't see before. And I think, you know, in my job, and forgive me if I take a little time here to go through it because this is an emotional issue with me. I do home care physical therapy. I go to people's homes all over Virginia Beach. And, you know, I'm in the mansions of Broad Bay, and I'm in the, you know, the roach-infested trailers. I see it all. I see people struggling with their water bills and things of that nature. I have been in the homes all over that were adversely affected by, you know, what's going on. But by the same token, you know, in terms of thing, I think that we really have to take a look seriously at our budget process and how we deliberate. We went through a couple months of death by PowerPoint, and then we came to a reconciliation. And the point is, though, and I think that one of the things that government in general has to do, and not only in Virginia Beach and everywhere, is to have the deliberations and open conversations and, you know, among ourselves that we didn't have. I have a problem with the operating budget. I would like to vote for the operating budget, but I, you know, frankness, can't do it because I'm concerned about raising taxes on a lot of people that I see have trouble paying for medicine, okay? And you know, and the other thing is, you know, the water bills that people have to pay and, some of the things going on, I don't know if we have the luxury of being able to pass, taxes right now, even though, may not be, really significant, but we really didn't have that conversation about the necessity for all-day kindergarten. My goodness, we have a wonderful school system, and we have a superintendent that just got named top in the state without all-day kindergarten. I would have loved that opportunity to express that. And the other thing is, too, I would have hoped we could have dedicated more, money into, stormwater. I'm a little concerned that we have things like field house in and, moving city halls without a discussion first. And maybe there's a reason that we got to do, okay? But the point is, and the other thing is, too, and I brought this up, during my concern and my input, we still have, if we take a look at, we have a very good police department, public safety and everything, and we've had some issues, with salary compression that, have not been addressed. We got to pay teachers more, and so we got some other really pressing priorities. We have a CIP, that, there's a lot of areas all around the city with road construction and everything, so I'm probably going to wind up supporting the CIP budget, but not the operating budget. Because, let me put it this way and I'll end. I have the privilege of treating a gentleman right now who is an engineer. He was with the Corps of Engineers. He was retired. He was actually down in New Orleans with Katrina. And I bounced things off him. And he made it a special point to me to say that this is not going to be a quick fix in any way, shape, or form. We are going through an audit right now that is going to be telling, and then don't forget, this is just a CIP for this year. There's going to be other years coming forward. But he said if you try to do too much too soon, and this is what he's telling me, that it takes a while for good engineering to set in. So I'm just saying, I think we have to take immediate action. It's like in physical therapy. You got a short-term plan and a long-term plan. But once again, I just asked the council if we maybe just take the time and deliberate a little more, hear about, differences, of opinion, and, just to, bring the public to the table on what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Dan?
So what happens if we do defer this, as he says, indefinitely? When do we have to make this go? What are our next steps? What do we do? I feel like all I've done is talk about budget for 3 months, so I know that, Virginia and I have talked about it.
We'll look like the federal government.
What's the step? What's that mean?
Well, at least with respect to funding education, the Virginia Code requires that you pass an operating budget funding education by May 15. That's why you're having a special meeting tonight, because next Tuesday would be the day after that. With respect to the rest of your operating budget, your charter says that if you don't pass a budget at least 30 days before the end of the fiscal year, then the city manager's recommendation takes effect. So those are the two time deadlines you have, but you really do have an obligation under the state code to at least address the education budget before the 15th of May. Correct.
Other comments or questions? John?
I don't know what I'm going to do relative to Bobby's motion yet, but I do recall when the city of Richmond did not appropriate their budget by that date, the school board took them to court. The state ruled, actually, they got a judgment in favor of the city of Richmond that they were not required and did not force them to appropriate their budget, and they didn't get one until July the 1st. I do know that actually happened in the city of Richmond. But I do think, but if I could address, I don't want a no vote on Mr. Dyer's motion to be seen like it's a yes vote for the operating budget, because I'm not in favor of the operating budget for lots of reasons. But at the same token, it's an academic vote, because if there were 6 votes to reject what is a very bad, and I would call malicious budget, we wouldn't be having it before us. So what we're going to have is possibly an 8-3 vote, then we're going to come back and adopt the budget, and it's not going to be deferred. So I don't know that the rationale and reasoning I totally agree with, but I think it doesn't really move the ball forward, in my opinion, Mr. Mayor.
And I agree with you, Mr. Moss.
And so in voting, not for what you think I would vote for, it's not because I'm for this budget, it's because the real issue is if we had 6 votes, we wouldn't be here on this budget. And I acknowledge that the majority of this body has a right to set a direction, and then a majority of you have a right to decide how well we did it. And then we'll talk about the other issue where it really does take 8 votes, a supermajority to approve the CIP. So if there's 4 people here who thinks this budget, this CIP, doesn't represent the priorities, 4 people can say no, and we will have to renegotiate. 4 people cannot change the operating budget. 4 people can change the CIP. So with all due respect, Mr. Dyer, to your rationale, which I agree with, I can't support the actual motion itself.
I would, Bobby, I respect your comments, and they were very sincere. And there's an element of frustration, I think, with everyone on the dais. However, we do have some time frames to deal with, with the calendar. And I do think that we could send the wrong signal to the investment community even by not being behind, by not supporting a budget as has been brought forward to us. And folks, I hope I've been respectful to everyone in this audience that came up and spoke. I would ask the same for me and everyone else up here, and I thank you. But Bobby, if you would consider pulling it in, we will vote the operating budget up or down, and then we will go to the capital improvement program, which would be the same as Mr. Boss just said. If 4 people vote no, then that does have to start. We'd have to work through it further.
Well, if I could say that, my job is to work collaboratively with this body.
And you do.
And it's also to work collaboratively with the public. I am willing to pull my motion with the understanding that I am going to pursue that if we can maybe just make the budget process a little bit more user-friendly and transparent going forward. And I know we have the public meetings and a few other things, but I think it's a process that, could maybe perhaps stand some improvement.
I'd welcome this. Or Jessica, is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Vasily, did you want to say something?
I just have a comment. I had asked to have a breakdown of just what is going to be happening this year and next year for stormwater. Because I think when we put it in this overall idea of 15 years, it sort of gives the impression that nothing is happening until that time. But since we're talking about the operating budget at this moment, and I think all of the council members got a copy of this, but if you look at this public works operations, and this isn't the CIP that I think most of the people addressed, there's quite a lot that's occurring from public works in maintenance and everyday work in all around the city. And I think, maybe we're not really looking at the extensive amount of work that, is going on in maintenance and other kinds of work. I mean, it's kind of 4 pages, and some of it spills over because we have 17 and 18, and I'm not exactly sure how far into other budgets it went. But it's just under 60, I have to put my glasses on to tell whether that's a 9 or an 8, just under $60 million in operations during this time frame, and they've had the fiscal year plan. Some is 17 and some is 18. So, I mean, when we're looking just at the CIP, you're really only looking at a part of it. And there is quite a lot that's being done all over the city, and this is the opportunity, too, that if there are smaller projects that, one neighborhood needs something that, they are certainly flexible in getting these things done. But I hope we look at the total package and not just the CIP.
Shannon?
Prepare some remarks for tonight. I joined City Council and ran for election twice, saying that I wanted to make Virginia Beach a Virginia Beach for everyone, a place where we call home, and we look to our needs and our opportunities and work together to try to make the best decisions we can for everyone. That's how I like to be. That's the kind of person that I am. we as council members, we hear from so many people across the city with very unique points of view and very unique ideas, and we get requests that are more often than not diametrically opposed to each other. And we all know that when we ask for your votes, and so we can represent everyone. We hear from people on one side of the issue or another side of the issue, and I guess we can pick a side and stick with it, and that's the way we're going to go. But I'll never be that kind of person. I want to work with everyone, and I want to see if all sides can make some progress. And maybe not get everything that you want, but each of us can get enough of what we want that we will make some progress. And it may take time, but we're looking out for everyone. And we're going to be a better city for doing that, in my opinion. A lot of time and work and effort has gone into these past few weeks, and no one here on this council wants to see homes flood. No one here on this council wants to see children suffer. My heart breaks when I think of the families who lost so much, and I'm committed to making things better. And I hope you know that I am. What disappoints me is the negative politics that are played by some who really only want to win, regardless of who it helps or who it hurts. I won't say a crossword about my colleagues, and I won't say a crossword about constituents. I don't think it's productive. But I can say with 100% certainty that if you want to persuade me, insulting me isn't going to get you very far. We have some serious stormwater issues in my district and across the city. As long as I serve on this council, I will fight to have more problems solved in the quickest time possible. I push for a 10-year timeline to remedy the flooding and stormwater issues. Although the 10-year timeline wasn't supported by the majority here, what we did achieve for those areas hardest hit in my district during Matthew, which is Princess Anne Plaza, Windsor Woods, the Lakes, is in the CIP presented today. It fully funds these three areas and prioritizes them as the first three projects out of the gate. In addition to pushing for that 10-year timeline, I also advocated very strongly for the open space and or the ARP monies that was diverted for light rail to be put to stormwater projects, mainly for dredging and maintenance of the canals and the pipes and those types of things across the city. This advocacy garnered the support of 4 more of my peers on council, so we weren't able to divert those funds to dredging and maintenance projects. But as a result of the advocacy, we were able to secure millions more for Lake Chubb and Lake Bradford, which weren't in the originally proposed budget. While I don't 100% support everything in tonight's presented operating budget or the CIP, I feel the budget is a start, but we have to stay vigilant and remember that there are so many steps ahead. Just last week, I, along with Councilman Wood and Council Lady Wilson, we brought forth a resolution that mandates that the city manager look for efficiencies and cost savings for stormwater and flooding projects, and to report back to us quarterly on his findings, and to speed up the process when opportunities present themselves. Permits, design, engineering, it all takes time, and I understand this. But we should all make a commitment, all of us, that goes beyond this budget, that we will see the solutions through and bring them to completion in the shortest amount of time possible. We're voting tonight for a budget that's going to take place over the next 12 months for the next fiscal year. And I encourage all citizens to stay involved and know that next year, at this same time, we're going to be voting on another budget. And you've mentioned it earlier tonight. But next year, we're going to have figures and plans and designs. We will know better how much things truly cost, how long they should truly take, and what true remedies are for many of our neighborhoods across the city. Also, next week, this council is going to be voting on the resolutions that Councilman Woodern and Wilson and I brought forward last week. And I encourage you to do your part and let your council representative know that you support our resolution directing the city manager to fix our flooding problems sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Shannon. Other comments, John?
Yeah, I would now like to address my substantive comments about the motion that's on the table, if I could, please.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to talk about and walk down through them by item. First and foremost, I want to talk about the tax levy increase. And because there really isn't any need to talk about we got a long debate about the merits of full-day kindergarten or not, but I'm just going to assume that it has merit. Now the real question is, what's the reason for the tax increase? Now, anyone who watched the school board hearings, and I did, and anyone who watched school board member Weems and school member Manning, what the school board actually said they needed next fiscal year to do the incremental increase in full-day kindergarten was $2.6 million. 1.025 cents generates about $6 million plus. Now, I did ask in the informal session when we had the reconciliation workshop, I asked the vice mayor that in his budget, specifically, was he saying that he was in favor of a tax increase that generated more revenue than the amount the school board said they actually needed to do full-day kindergarten? His answer was yes. I admire him because that's true. But that means we're funding some requirement that they didn't identify in the public at all, and why? To the point that the person made here was $2 million, $2.6 million out of a $900 million budget, and it was the last thing that they couldn't fund? That everything else in their budget was more important than children for $2.6 million? Shame on them. Now, the point that was made at the public hearing, which I thought was a good one, was made by Stephen Johnson, a proponent of kindergarten. You may all recall what he said. That never through all the process, till at the end game of the budget's adoption, was there any mention that they were going to be advancing the question of full-day kindergarten. So not at one public hearing did the public have any advance notice that that was going to be a topic, and they were going to be asking for a tax increase. That was brought in at the last. So there was no process debate by the school board itself. I realize we're not responsible for the school board, but I think we are responsible for process. But, like I said, put that aside, there is not any fiscal merit for increasing taxes for that requirement, given how small it really is. And we could have found $2.6 million ourselves, because I'm sure we waste more than that. You go take a look. So that's item 2. Now, the last item I want to address, because the other items I really don't have real issues with, other than raising the fee that's not necessary for drainage, if we took a different approach, was when this council, 2 budgets ago, we had a horrendous debate and a vote. We said that light rail was more important than buying additional farmland. And we said that light rail was more important than open space or improving open space. We not only did it once, we did it twice. I didn't vote for either of those budgets, but the council as a body adopted those, saying those were lower priority things, and we moved the money. Now the public rejects light rail wisely, in my opinion. And so now all of a sudden, those things that were a lower priority than light rail are now a higher priority than flooding. Now, some will argue, well, yes, but we really can't use the money right now. Well, I remember when we couldn't use the money right now for Lake Gaston because we didn't have enough, but we put the money in a trust fund, so when the time came, we didn't have to raise people's taxes and fees to do the project. Nothing keeps us from putting that money in there, so when they are ready, we don't have to increase fees and taxes. Now, you may recall the elderly gentleman who came down and spoke, who mentioned that he bought flood insurance, I think it was 15 days before the flood. It might have been 10, but I think it was 15. And the cost of that insurance was $1,821. Well, anyone who buys flood insurance knows you pay that some lump sum up front. Well, obviously, his home got a lot of damage. Obviously, the flood insurance won't help him this time around. But remember what he said after that? That when he paid the premium, and I give credit to whoever the insurance agent was, told him that he should expect his insurance premium to go up, remember how much he said? 16% every year for the next 6 years. You don't have to do very long, 16 into 72, how long it takes to double your payment. So in 6 years out, over $300 a month, on top of what the second mortgage, I think he said he had to take on his house, plus the primary. And what did he say? I won't be able to afford to stay in my house on my fixed income. And the lady that spoke about the anxiety that she was having, those voices, those are the faces. That's the opportunity cost that we are saying when we say that open space and buying farm rights is a higher priority than putting more cash to avoid these fees on people. Because they're paying, how many times are they paying? They're paying because now their homes are worth less, and there's no doubt about that, their marketability. They're paying a second time for whatever they had to pay to cover the cost of repairing their home because the FEMA thing didn't cover it all. If they had insurance, or the second loan, which they all talked about. Then if they go out and now buy the flood insurance, 1821 is probably gonna be the lowest it's ever gonna be. And then when they exit strategy, they take the loss. And probably maybe have to bring money to closing. They're paying 4 times, and now we're asking them to pay again with an increased fee because we want to be able to buy development rights from farmers, and we want to make improvement on open space. And Mr. Mayor, that is why I respect that people come to different conclusions, and we all work for the public. I'm just explaining to the public my reasoning for voting no, and I developed an alternative proposal, which I respect that people here didn't buy into. That's fine. That's why I'm not making these mechanical substitute motions. They serve no purpose. But I want the public to know that there was a meaningful alternative, and you ultimately get to judge our performance. That's not my job. That's yours. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, John. Other questions or comments? Jessica?
I just wanted to make comments on how I'll be voting this evening. Last night, I made a Facebook post. I actually had a client of mine call into the office who lives in Windsor Woods. We prepared an estimate for her flood insurance, and the premium came back to be $3,097 a year. She lives on Lamplight Lane, which is right off Bow Creek, and her comments to me were, I was going to give my daughter this home, and her daughter does not make enough money to pay the mortgage and the insurance. I ran for city council because I know this city is becoming unaffordable for people like my family. My husband is a school teacher. He makes a regular wage. I work a regular day job. And I know that my peers are in the same situation that I am, and that is that there are not high-paying jobs in this city, and the housing that is available to us is not sustainable. And I do not know how we can move forward as a body when we are not addressing public infrastructure that helps alleviate the cost of living here. The repetitive loss, when you have flood insurance and if you have repetitive losses on your home, those increases, they won't just be 16%, they could be up to 25%. And we have had FEMA bulletin after FEMA bulletin come down, and they are just bracing us to tell our clients, and the reason that that gentleman's agent told him that he should expect increases is because there is no other possibility. And my vote today is completely reflective on that. I want people my age, I want people of all ages to be able to afford to live here, and I know for a fact that if we continue to raise taxes and not do what we have to do for stormwater, that's not going to be possible.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm going to make a couple of comments pertaining to both the CIP and the operating budget. I won't speak anymore, and then we'll vote on the operating budget. I don't feel it, I know, I speak for this entire council, that we are firmly committed to addressing stormwater management in this city. I say that as honestly as I can say it, and I believe it as honestly as I can say it, and I think we're all in agreement on that. The city staff is certainly doing that. I would tell you, when I heard that the thing that didn't sit well for me tonight, boondoggle plan. I can tell everyone in this audience, and I believe every council member would agree with me on this, we've got a city manager that was with the Army Corps of Engineers and ran it. Never would it be a better time to have someone with that experience leading our city when we are addressing storm water management. The audience made a comment, several people who spoke. Do it right, do it right, do it right. This entire council wants to do it right. Regrettably, doing it right is going to take some time. And that's not a cop-out, it's a fact. We must realize that there's a tremendous amount of science that, frankly, has just, come in. Our environment is changing. People can say whatever we want to say. Sea level rise is there, and we must use the most current science available to make sure we do it right. Not to mention that when we do it, when we come up with the right plan, we got to find locations for pump stations. We got to do a massive number of things that regrettably take time. A key point that Mr. Moss and Jessica made when they made their presentation, and I think is so critical, I do not want the citizens' expectations to be something that is not reality. And I hope you heard Mr. Moss just agree with me. Hurricane Matthew comes again, more than likely, you would have the same exact flooding situation, even with these CIP projects being completed. That's real reality? It is. That was a 500-year storm. You can't prepare for a 500-year storm. I mean, Mr. Moss is over here shaking his head. I'm not trying to say anything. I'm just being honest and speaking openly, and don't want expectations set that are not going to be obtainable. And please remember that I said that. We also have other items in this budget, especially in our CIP. Stormwater is getting the largest increase, obviously, and for good reason, and will continue to be. But we also have schools, we have roadways, we have sewer and water, buildings, our coastal, our economic development and tourism, and IT and Parks and Rec. All these are very important too. And the key thing that we have to do is find a balance that is fair to the citizens as far as the cost for taxes and fees. And I want to thank the Vice Mayor and this council deliberating this for the last couple of weeks and coming to this conclusion. I think this budget does that. When everyone's not happy, that means somebody's not getting something that they want. And that's the way the budget goes. I will tell you that I am a strong supporter of full-day kindergarten. I do believe every bit of education that we can give a child, pre-K and kindergarten, is going to be a tremendous benefit to that child in the future. No need to discuss that any further. The Bayville Creek SSD, I believe that the staff is working with that community and looking at options that can be addressed here in the future. And I know that Vice Mayor Jones and Mr. Wood, who've been involved in that, are working also. I do want to also bring out something that I'm going to ask the staff to do upon completion of this budget being approved. I believe it's absolutely important that we get current financial information on every public-private partnership this city has participated in. And we will let the numbers speak for themselves, good or bad. I look forward to receiving those numbers. I know that Mr. Moss and I will debate the fact public money going to a private project. We agree on that. There's no question that there's a difference between our opinions on that. But at the same time, that if these projects are generating X amount of dollars and are helping us get through a recession and helping us to have lower tax rates, I want that to be acknowledged. Don't have the evidence yet. I'm going to ask the city staff to bring forth that type of information. I also want it made, included from the staff, information on how we finance some of these projects that we've heard about today, and what impact it has on the general fund. Now, you will hear, and accurately stated, the hotel tax and the restaurant tax, all of it does not go to the general fund. And it doesn't. But a lot of it does. Let's have those numbers shown and see where we'd be without those amounts going to the general fund. I'd also say to you that when we sit back and reflect on income coming from like the town center, a lot of that is restaurant tax and hotel tax. So to say the full $7 million goes to the general fund, wrong. But let's be factual on what does go to the general fund and what does not, and where those funds go that are not going into the general fund. The issue about gap financing. How many times did we hear people say, that money has to go into roads, that money has to go into schools, that money has to go into stormwater management? We need to talk about that publicly and honestly. That money's not available without the project being built and the project, performing and providing those funds for that project. But nonetheless, I want to sit back and tell you that this council really isn't that far apart on what we want to do. We're not quite getting there like in total agreement, and I'll accept that. But I will call for the question on the budget, please.
What was the motion that?
Approval of the reconciliation budget.
All right, so you withdrew the motion?
Yes.
That is correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I thank him for it.
By a vote of 8-3, you have adopted the budget.
I'll now accept a motion on the 2017-2018 capital budget.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
before I make the motion, I'd like to make a few comments.
Yes, sir.
There seems to be some doubt in some people's minds as to whether or not the city council and the city staff, city managers' budget is addressing stormwater. I'd just like to point out that when I read the motion for the capital improvement budget, that the new stormwater projects that are in this capital improvement budget are exceed $43 million
For the year.
for this 1 year. And they include North Lake Holly Watershed, South Lake Holly Watershed, primary system infrastructure improvements, Southern Canal lead ditch and culvert improvements, residential drainage cost participation program, stormwater master planning analysis and inventory, Windsor Woods drainage, surface water regulatory compliance program, water quality restoration participation projects, Asheville Park drainage improvements, Sherwood Lake drainage improvements, Princess Anne Plaza drainage area, the Lakes drainage improvements, Eastern Shore Drive drainage Phase 1, Lynn Haven watershed restoration, Aragona drainage improvements, Elizabeth River TMDL implementation plan, Southern Rivers TMDL implementation plan, oceanfront stormwater facilities maintenance, stormwater pump station modifications, neighborhood stormwater infrastructure improvements, stormwater quality enhancements, lake management, stormwater infrastructure rehabilitation and improvements, Lake Chubb and Bradford Lake stormwater program. All of this, just in this 1 year, is $43,063,514. That's just for this 1 year. But I'd also like to point out, in the overall plan, from 2018 through 2023, there's a total plan of $422,022,332 for stormwater management. That the idea that the city is not trying to address and working to address stormwater management is just false. That's what it comes down to. The city is addressing stormwater management, and they're doing it this year, and they're doing it in the future. So, having said that, Mr. Mayor, I'd
Yes,
like
sir.
to move for approval of the fiscal year 2017-2018 capital budget. First, authorize fiscal year 2018, fiscal year 2023 capital improvement program and appropriate $300,456,1 $122, subject to funds being provided. 2, authorize issuance of general obligation public improvement bonds in the maximum amount of $69,272,406. And 3, authorize issuance of stormwater utility system revenue bonds in the maximum amount of $30,143,013. So moved, Mr. Mayor.
I have a motion, I have a second by Mr. Wood. Discussion? Yes, sir.
Just a couple comments. I would agree with the Vice Mayor that in fact this budget does have investment in stormwater management. I think the question is, how aggressive is that investment and how is it paid for? First and foremost, please no, I mean, this is honest debate among people who can have honorable differences, and I'm not
It's
saying,
been a good debate.
and I'm not saying that their view is right. I disagree with it, but it's their view, and you have to judge. I'm just trying to explain to you there is a difference and what my difference is, and you all can be the judge. But I have no pejorative characterization of their motivations or why they're voting the way they are. That's between them and you, not between them and me. But when you look at now, the difference is, how is that amount? First of all, you can fund all of this in 6 years with $400 million, something less, and use all the revenues from light rail and some other revenues and get it done and provide the money no matter how it's stretched out. Or you can take that revenue stream from light rail, use other stuff, and then principally finance most of these projects with debt, financed by what? Ever-increasing storm water management fees, which is the basics of financing those projects. Now, all the increases needed over that 15-year period are not addressed, but you do know that each and every year over the next 6 years, as advertised in the paper, there would be a 5% increase in the fee structure. Basically, some years it's lower, but on basically 5% per year, it goes up the daily rate. And then there is what? Now, 1 cent of the real estate tax for PAYGO projects, which is cash, and of that extra 0.2%, each and every year over 5 years, that money is being deposited for the Lake Chubb project because it takes a lot of money. So what you have to understand is when someone tells you they're spending money, isn't the same thing as saying the project will come to completion. It just means they're spreading the dollars over a larger projects, and some of those aren't done until, some are 6, some are 2. Aragona's in this budget year, but the actual relief against nuisance flooding, and the mayor is correct, whoever drainage project is only being built to the 10-year flood standard. People need to understand that something that's greater than that 10-year rainfall isn't something, it may not come up into your house, but it might come up to the street, might come up in your yard, but the protection that any of these projects are, as currently proffered and specified, is to build a 10-year flood protection for those areas. Far cry from what we might be seeing, but you need to understand, so the mayor is correct, and I have said that over and over, and on anything I've said, this is mitigation, this is not flood prevention. And it does come to about $400 million. And that doesn't cover all parts of the city. This is a big problem that's going to require a lot of cooperation. But getting back to the priority, I do not believe that a city hall is higher priority in the 5-year budget than drainage. I just cannot believe that's true. Are there complications with that? Absolutely. But there's complications with those people's homes as well. And balance. What is balance? If you were at home and had a child who had a fatal illness, and you had to come up with your deductible first, and then you maxed out your insurance, what would you do? You would do everything else to take care of that problem first, because, well, it may mean some other things that you otherwise would do, and the scheme of that, they're less important. So this comes back to, they know, I think, Mr. Mayor, that we can't do everything, and I think they understand that we're not going to protect them against a hurricane. Lord knows, let's hope one doesn't happen. And let's hope we don't have a lot of, may the Lord bless us with low rainfall as well to get these projects done. But they do expect us to do as much as we can and to do just what they would do at home if they were faced. Think of the reductions and things that they're having to cut back to make those second mortgage payments, to pay that $3,000 flood insurance. And all we're telling them is, well, we can't do it all right now, and I understand some aspects of that, but we're also saying that the very people who accepted Sherwood Lakes, the very people who accepted Asheville Park have the expertise and the wherewithal to properly assess what we need to go going forward. I challenge that. I challenge that. And I think that whatever we do with this budget, that we take a hard look and that we get independent assessments from outside people, Mr. Mayor. And when it comes to costing, I don't know that I would trust the staff to be an unbiased look, but I hope they do full accounting, not only the benefits, but the cost of those places as well. The fire truck that we had to buy just for town center only, the $1 million of labor, the fire station we had to build, the debt service on the fire station. Let's make sure if you're gonna put everything on the plus side, make sure you fully accounted everything on the minus side as well. And then there's the fundamental philosophical difference, which will never close, but that'll just be an honorable and respectful difference of opinion, and the voters get to decide that too.
And that's
Thank you so much.
Okay. Jim Wood, and then we'll call for the vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, Barbara, I'm sorry.
Was she going first?
No, you go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate a lot of what both of y'all said about that, specifically getting the information on the public-private partnerships and that sort of thing. I know we've looked at that in the past, and I think that's very healthy for us to take a look at it. I want to address a couple of things that people have said. As the council knows, I serve on the Senate Joint Subcommittee to address recurrent flooding, and we go up every other month to Richmond to talk about this sort of thing. And what I can tell you is flooding in Virginia is not just a concern in Virginia Beach. Far from it. That is why the state is addressing it. The young man, Mr. Trent, I think it was, talked about having the state, how bad it would be to have the state come involved. We want the state to be involved. We desperately want the state to be involved. He spoke about resiliency, and I remind this council that the council as a body, not everybody voted for it, but the council as a body specifically endorsed my subcommittee's recommendation to create a cabinet-level resiliency position in the state, so that cities, counties, towns could all take advantage of the non-governmental opportunities, the federal and state opportunities there to address flooding and for, frankly, for mitigation and relief. And this is a committee that Delegate Stolle chairs, and he and I spent an awful lot of time up there talking about that. And as the Vice Mayor knows, we were both at the Chesapeake Beach flooding meeting, which came up after, frankly, we got a lot of information about Windsor Woods and Princess Anne Plaza, and I'm frankly very pleased that we were able to add some money towards that. I would say in the time that I've been on council, I've been involved in several flood projects and stormwater projects, and this goes back to 2002, so this is not new stuff. And these projects take a long time. I think the council remembers, a lot of us remember the 61st Street Pump Station. Major project, a lot of mad neighbors. Nobody wanted it until it started to clear all the water off. And we stopped having the beach closing all the time because of the runoff and things like that. Shore Drive, constantly, because, the part of Virginia Beach I represent is basically the upper right-hand corner. So everybody calls me and says, Lynn Haven District, you represent Lynn Haven Mall. There's very little named Lynn Haven in my district other than the river. That's just the way it is. But, major projects and minor projects on Shore Drive. And as the Vice Mayor and I know, we represent a coastal part of Virginia Beach that's impacted by the bay. We've had flooding issues for forever, frankly. I know that, the Vice Mayor was talking about when he hunted as a young man in parts of Virginia Beach that it flooded then, and that was the 1980s. 1980s. And
you're very kind.
First landing. So, but I mean, first landing. So that, but I think that's important to address, because we have done these, and the quickest flooding project we ever did was the one that Bobby talked about, and we had a group of people come to us at an open mic presentation, frankly, and said, we've got a problem here. And it was frankly the first that a lot of us had heard about it, and we immediately got this done. Now, I think it's an example of us getting something done quickly, and I think it also shows that in the future we need to be more deliberative about this so that we don't have these issues. I think it's extraordinarily important also what Mr. Moss and the mayor said is we don't want to set expectations. I remember very clearly somebody from Public Works telling me, and I said, well, what would have happened, I mean, if we'd had these ditches cleaned out? He said, well, you'd have been able to see the bottom of those ditches under 3 feet of water. I mean, that's the thing, other than not being able to see them. So we need to be very, very careful about that. Storms like Hurricane Matthew are not what we've experienced in the past. I'm not saying that they're not coming now, but they're not something we've experienced in the past. So I think we need to be cognizant of that. Finally, there's some comments about helicopters, and it makes it sound like, we're buying toys or something like that. The Virginia Beach Police Department's had helicopters for at least 40 years. Okay, people, you might not know that, but we've had 2 helicopters for over 40 years. The city manager, rightfully so, is taking a look at the expenses of those helicopters, and surprisingly, big gas-guzzling helicopters are more expensive than smaller, fuel-efficient helicopters. And now that we have things like drones that are used, we can reduce that cost. And I can assure you that the last couple of helicopters we paid for were not $9 million helicopters. They were significantly more. And the city manager's got a plan to sell our old helicopters to people who want to buy them. So we've had these for a while. This is not some toy or gimmick. This is a public safety item that frankly the largest city in Virginia needs because of land mass, and to be able to address that. So those are my comments on flooding and helicopters and everything like that.
Thank you, Jim. Barbara, I'm sorry.
I apologize. I just have a few comments on different topics, if I could, dealing with the CIP. In talking back to the stormwater issues, of course, we've got the projects that are specific to build in neighborhoods, but there are 2 that are extremely important, and they're in the process, so it's not brand new. But CIP 7-030 is a citywide sea level rise recurrent flooding analysis. And this has been underway for a while, and I think it's extremely important because we have to recognize the reality of, as a coastal community, what our challenges are and what our abilities to fix might be. And for those folks who maybe are not aware, we are talking with universities, we are talking with people who have this knowledge, and then there is another one that's extremely important, which is the stormwater master planning analysis and inventory, which is CIP 7-027, which divides the entire city into individual watersheds. And we have completed 3 watersheds. We have 7 underway watersheds, and then the other 22 will be completed over the next few years. And in doing this, we'll be doing the analysis of modeling, which someone said we were not doing. And the modeling is extremely important and will help us to make sure that we do get it right when we are trying to address the differences that we have around the city. And as someone spoke to the wind tide experience we had in the southern watersheds over the last week, and these have been occurring probably since the Currituck Inlets filled up in the 1800s, because there's no outlet for Back Bay when Currituck Sound is blown into this area. We have differences all around the city depending on which watershed we're in and what the different dynamics of the hydrology and the topography and the everything goes into it. And so the modeling is so important to make sure that we get it right when we are addressing these things, and it's not an overnight thing. It takes time. And learning from the experience of some of the systems that have been put in that did not function tells us that we need to make certain that we are getting it right every time that we do it. And as far as this wind tide experience that we had last week, yes, it came up into places that it has not historically gotten to, although it's happened most springs in my lifetime, and I won't say how many those are, when the southwest winds blow hard. But it did go up farther this time, and we have to say, where did it go, and what was different, and what has happened? And so it's all a learning experience, just like Matthew was a learning experience. So that's what I have to say about flooding. One of the things that I know we heard an awful lot about, particularly last week, when Sandbridge Road was one of the roads that was closed. There were several. But I want to speak to what is happening with that road project, because we I heard a lot from people who said, we need to build this road immediately. Road projects are a lot like the stormwater projects. It takes years to do it. And those first several years, you don't see it, and you don't know that it's being done. That's kind of like the stormwater projects are now. There's a lot of design being done, a lot of permitting being done, but you don't see it until you get to that construction part. Well, this is true with Sandbridge Nemo A. If you remember a few years ago, we decided to phase that road because we thought we could do it faster if we did. And so for the last few years, we have been working very diligently on Nemo A and Sandbridge Road. We have are very far along in the design process. We have the permits for that road. We're now funded to complete the design, and this budget adds $800,000 to then go to that next step, which would be relocating the utilities. All of that has to be done before you can get construction. And this budget also has begun to put some money in the out years for construction, and we're going to be looking for construction money over the next year or two. So when we get to that point where we are ready to go construction, that we hope we can have the money that we can be able to do that. So, I mean, when folks think that we're not doing anything about that road, it's just that we're doing the parts right now that are not visible. The other part in MOB is in preliminary engineering and then has to go through the permitting process. So it just takes a long time, and I think it's important that folks follow this. And then the other thing we talked about last week was that field house, and I think we agreed that we are not voting with this, that we are doing this and moving it forward immediately. We're going to have a lot more discussion. It's going to come to this, some public discussion before we decide to move forward. And so this is, in effect, one of those things that's being put there in the budget and say that if we do decide to go forward, this is how it would be done and how it would be paid for. But I think, if I remembered correctly from last week, we said that there's going to be some steps before we start any work on it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Does that mean, because I know how the motion reads, and I know how the language reads in the CIP, and there is actually money appropriated in the CIP with this motion, and that restriction is not in the motion that we've made, and therefore, since we've taken no vote, I just want to make sure that what you just said, Mrs. Henley, that there would be no expenditures against that appropriation until after this council provides explicit direction. Is the understanding either one that the city manager has, or the motion needs to be amended? Because the
Mr.
motion
Hanson,
by itself doesn't-
that's your understanding?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor. Call for the question.
By a vote of 9-2, you have adopted the CIP.
Thank you, council. This, I'm out of practice. Do I have a motion for the resolution to direct the city attorney to draft ordinances regarding the removal of the light rail taxes and fee increases?
Mr. Mayor, I've consulted with the city attorney, and I think I'm correct that as a consequence of our vote, that motion is now moot, or a point of order would be no longer has standing and doesn't require action. I'll let the city attorney opine.
Okay, how about resolution to confirm the intent to redirect tax streams from light rail and multimodal projects to the,
I move approval, and it's so that we are explaining what we just did and what our intent was.
motion second. Call for the question, please.
By a vote of 9-2, you have adopted it.
Very good. Council, I would commend the council for their discussion and debate. I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Very good. Hey, you want my jacket? No.